Ladies and gentlemen, honorable ladies and gentlemen, too numerous to mention you one by one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
These are live pictures from a public lecture in honor of former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, on his birthday. And the person you're actually watching right now on the screen is the Sultan of Sokoto, speaking on this particular special occasion.
The pecking order of seniority by age in community and elders who are respected and revered, irrespective of their tribe or religion. A child was everybody's child in the community. So every child behaved and could be disciplined by any adult, anywhere, anytime. The values of honesty, probity, hard work, selflessness were the hallmark of our society. Teachers were also role models, and so they are pupils of their own children. No one dared to live above his means or acquire any wealth beyond his legitimate earnings. It is the immediate community that sanctions such venality before even the authorities step in. The civil service was both productive and efficient. Citizens had a lot of respect for authority. Society lived in peace and harmony. General Gowon's presence reminds us of the struggle to keep this country intact and united. His name evokes Nigerian unity. Gowon was turned into an acronym for Go On With One Nigeria. Indeed, he was the symbol of unity, humility, and accommodation. He came to leadership as a child of necessity, following the 1960s military coup. As a young, dashing bachelor, whom one beautiful nurse had her eyes on and swept him off his feet. And 1969 brought the two of them together as head of state and first lady. You all know what I mean, because Victoria had been there all these years. National cohesion and integration had been the hallmark of what we have been doing. He laid the foundation for continuity and stability. We owe him immense gratitude for the perseverance and tenacity in keeping this country in one piece and at peace with itself. Nigeria is exceptionally lucky to have a statesman of his age in full consciousness. Not many countries are really lucky to have such statesmen that live this long and in relatively good health. Statesmen are a repository of institutional memory and wisdom. Their presence in our midst helps us to remember things and recall experiences that would guide us in times of crisis. It's my pleasure and privilege, and I say privilege, but when I was a young man, when Gowon was head of state, I was a very, very young person. Today, it's a privilege to chair this anniversary lecture, where we recognize our nation's leader and our mentor, and appreciate his contribution to this great country at a critical junction of its history. The lecturer, as we all know, a distinguished Nigerian whom we are all very proud of for his services to the country and Africa, is really fit to wear the cap of the distinguished lecturer for today. My few words above are only an attempt to convey our gratitude to this great statesman. Only Almighty God can reward him for the sacrifices and the perseverance he made to keep this country one and serve it with diligence and dedication. Before I conclude, I would like to just want to ask all of us here in this hall, look around and see the dignitaries that have come to honor this humble and honorable gentleman. Why so? And I'll quote, I'm trying to give you an answer now, and I quote my father, Sultan Dasuki, the 18th Sultan of Sokoto, where he said, if you pursue a life of honor, you may come to some material abundance. But if you pursue strictly the accumulation of material wealth by any and every means, you are not likely to find the company and pleasure of honor. As I round up, I want to use this medium, as I've done before. I have talked with them to wish General Gowon many, many more years in good health. As his president in our midst, is a panacea for our unity and stability. As I say happy 90th birthday, may Almighty Allah bring us together again, not this hall to a much bigger hall, for us to mark your 100 years alive and healthy. As I thank all of you, because I don't want to say much about our relationship with General Gowon and his family, with my father. I will allow him to say so. Because one thing I know he's always telling me he is missing is the fura that we used to take to him in Dodam Barracks when he was head of state. And I told him that fura is still available, and I will send it to him today to his house. So, General, once more, we wish you all the very best. And to everybody here, as the chairman of this occasion, and I want to ask the chairman of the planning committee, I hope I'm chairing very well. Because you say if you are doing anything, do it well. So if you are chairing, you better chair well. So chairman, I hope I'm chairing very well. We thank you most sincerely and wish you all the very best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Would like that we give the distinguished chairman of this occasion another bigger round of applause. And to also thank him. We must also thank him for keeping it very succinct and, of course, straight to the point. And I think this is leadership by example. So we're expecting other speakers to follow suit. Please let's give him another round of applause. At this juncture, I just want to take time out to recognize very quickly from this end the former Vice President Mohammed Namadi Sambo, GCON. We welcome you, sir. We also welcome the Governor of Bauchi State, Kauram Bauchi, Senator Bala Mohammed. We welcome you, sir. We welcome the former Governor of Bauchi State, Dr. Adamumo Azu, CON. A round of applause for him. We also welcome the former Governor of Kano State, Engineer Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso. We welcome you, sir. And then from this other end, we must also recognize the Etsunupe Bagadoji. We'd like to welcome you. Please let's welcome Dr. Yahya Abubakar III. We'd like you. Thank you so very much for coming. We'll keep every
Well, you have actually heard that His Royal Majesty Sultan Muhammad Saad, the Sultan of Sokoto, had just finished speaking. That Sultan Muhammad Saad Abubakar III had just finished speaking on the occasion of a public lecture organized in honor of former head of state General Yakubu Gowon on his 90th birthday. And we also saw a lot of dignitaries, around in the premises to celebrate with him. Talking about we saw the likes of emirs, we saw governors, we also saw the former President Olusegun Obasanjo, in their midst, and we also heard of the arrival of the former Vice President Namadi Sambo and so many dignitaries who are expected to be arriving at the scene of the particular occasion. We also heard so many dignitaries come out to, eulogize and also extol the former head of state, saying really, really beautiful things about him. We will definitely be reconnecting with that particular occasion, with the lecture. And right about now, we're seeing a very, very interesting cultural display happening at the moment.
In the waters of our tradition, the rhythm, the dance, music, culture. This is truly African. The Jarawa dancers from Plateau State, let's give them another round of applause. Because we have roots, we have community, we have rhythm, we were born dancing. It's a typical Nigerian thing. We thank them for celebrating our celebrant. We appreciate them. And talking about roots and culture, I would like to note very quickly some of our eminent traditional rulers who are here with us today. His Royal Majesty Eze Dr. Cletus Ilomwan, Chairman, Imo State Elders Council, Co-Chairman, Southern Traditional Rulers Council, Chancellor, Federal University, Birnin Kebbi. Let's give him a round of applause. He's here with us. And of course, we have Dr. Benjamin Kechuku, Secretary, Southern Traditional Ruler Council, the Dane of Agbo. A round of applause for him. He's seated on the high table. Thank you so very much. Much appreciated. A couple of weeks ago, a gentleman made his way to a wedding. A very celebrated gentleman, a very high-ranking gentleman, and took to the dance floor to show just how much his knees are in good shape. That gentleman, only yesterday, was chairman at an occasion where I was privileged to be anchor, and he took charge as only him can. A man astute in shuttle diplomacy, a former president and cultural aficionado. I bring you a man whose time it is to deliver his intervention at this celebration today. Please help me welcome a man popularly referred to as OBJ, His Excellency, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. Continue to clap, it's a long walk. And he makes his way, exchanges pleasantries as he always does. We celebrate His Excellency.
Your Excellency, Your Excellency, my boss, the celebrant, a man of destiny, Sir, before I go on and recognize or acknowledge the presence of all the distinguished men and women here, I want to report to you the chairman of this occasion, because on the program, if you look at your program very well, I'm not billed to speak. And the chairman of this occasion, I said to him that if he will chair well, he will not call me to speak. And he said he will use his power and authority to to make sure that I am called out to speak. And I said if he does that, he will not have been chairing well. As if that was not bad enough. When I was called out, he said he has successfully performed a coup. Sir, in your power and authority as the former president and head and commander-in-chief, I will leave the judgment in your hand. Tomorrow, I'm supposed to be speaking. And I don't want to undermine myself by saying today what I should be saying tomorrow. But I will say a few of the things that I will be saying tomorrow. One is that this is a national celebration. And you are worthy to be nationally celebrated while you are still alive. I look at the galaxy of distinguished men and women around. Only very few of them can claim to be eyewitnesses to your time in government, not to talk of your time in the army. And because by the grace of God, who has given you the longevity of life, and who has given me a little bit to be following you, I will just thank God on your behalf that God has made you to be 90. If I have come from Calabar, I will say 90 no be yoke. And sir, 90 no be joke. I will reserve the rest of my comment till tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Your Excellencies, indeed, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, His Excellency, is a man who is a delight to media personalities. Not only is he a delight to media personalities, he indeed brings it each time. And Nigerians celebrate you, sir. We welcome you and we thank you for your intervention today. We do have quite a number of goodwill messages as the program proceeds, but we will, at this point, like to take a quick quote. All we have is the knowledge passed on to us by our elders, experiences we inculcate and hardly negate. But to bridge the generation gap, one needs to adapt to the new while retaining the goodness of the old. I believe that our celebrant, General Dr. Yakubu Gowon, understands what it means when I say to my children, I don't understand Instagram. I'll go there, but I don't understand it. And they say to me, but you have to come along. It's also the part where wisdom is conferred on elder statesmen like our celebrant today, who can call us all to order because at 90, he has earned his stripes. Our celebrant today also understands what it means when it is said, remain patient and give all your respect to our beloved seniors. They have earned their dignity through their lifetime. Let's give a round of applause to our celebrant one more time. And who says music is not the food of the soul? And because we have music today, and we are a nation of very celebrated musicians, singers, and performers across the world, our children are breaking new grounds, and they are delivering from coast to coast across the world. It's time for us now to take salute to excellence in songs, hymns, and anthems by the Festival of Praise Choir and Orchestra. We do this in celebration. If they are ready, so are we. This is a skill set that is not given to everyone. Some people are able to speak well, some people are able to sing well, and some people are able to dance well. We don't all have the same skills. And this collection of young men and women will delight us in songs, hymns, and anthems. By the Festival of Praise Choir, let's encourage them as they make their way to the stage. Thank you very much. chair. That is Salute to Excellence in Songs, Hymns, and Anthems by the Festival of Praise Choir and Orchestra. Another round of applause for them for doing such a great job and for managing their time as best as they can. Your Excellencies, I would like to quickly recognize a woman very much after my heart, whose job very early on is to be a diplomat. And subsequently, she went on to run the Ministry of Women Affairs in Nigeria. Help me welcome Ambassador Judith Sefiata, former Minister for Women Affairs, who is 91 years old. Your Excellency, welcome. It's good to see you, ma. And as they say in my mother's place, Nyase Avo. Welcome, ma. Welcome. We also have former Minister of Environment, Her Excellency, Distinguished Senator Helen Eswene, who is in the house with us. I see you, ma'am. Welcome. Good to see you. We also have guests who are here, Apostle Alfred T.B. Williams and Reverend Mrs. Oymaya Williams from the United Kingdom. They are our guests here. We welcome you. Let's salute them. Please clap for them. Reverend Dr. and Pastor Mrs. Moses Arosiola, we thank you for coming. Thank you very much indeed. Andy has the next item on the agenda. Andy.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Standing by the already established protocol, I have the very rare privilege of having to introduce our guest lecturer today. Our guest lecturer today is a man that needs really no introduction because he's traversed the length and breadth of Africa and the world, but of course has also won laurels and encomiums, not only for himself, but to the entire continent of Africa. I introduce to you our guest lecturer, Dr. Akinwumi A. Adesina, President, African Development Bank Group. But just as he makes his way here, I'd just like that you stand where you are briefly, because in the parts of the country where I'm from, when we introduce guest lecturers, we ask them to just rise for a brief moment. And I'd like to just quickly say that he is often described as Africa's optimist in chief. African Development Bank Group President Dr. Akinwumi Adesina is widely lauded for his visionary leadership and passion for Africa's transformation. Formerly the Nigerian Agriculture Minister, Dr. Adesina was elected President of the African Development Bank Group on May 28, 2015. He was unanimously re-elected for a second term of 5-year term on August 27, 2020. Dr. Adesina graduated with a bachelor's degree in agricultural economics, first-class honors from the prestigious University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, Nigeria, in 1981. Dr. Adesina holds a master's degree 1985 and a PhD in agricultural economics 1988 from Purdue University, United States of America, where he won the Outstanding PhD Thesis Award for that year. I thought you were going to give him a round of applause. Dr. Adesina was the prestigious Rockefeller Foundation Social Science Fellowship winner in 1988, which launched him into his international career. A bold reformer, a Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria from 2011 to 2015, Dr. Adesina turned the agricultural sector of Nigeria around within 4 years. Under his tenure, Nigeria ended 40 years of corruption in the fertilizer sector by developing and implementing an innovative electronic wallet system which directly provides farmers with subsidized farm inputs at scale using their mobile phones. Within the first 4 years of its launch, this electronic wallet system reached 15 million farmers, dramatically transforming their lives. With Dr. Adesina at the helm, the African Development Bank Group achieved the highest capital increase since its establishment in 1964, when on the 31st of October 2019, shareholders from 80 member countries raised the general capital from $93 billion to a historic $208 billion. The African Development Bank Group responded boldly and swiftly to the COVID-19 pandemic. On 3rd of April 2020, the premier development finance institution launched a landmark $3 billion COVID-19 social bond, followed by a crisis response facility of $10 billion. Dr. Adeshina has been recognized with numerous awards. On 19th October 2017, the President was conferred with the World Food Prize, also known as the Nobel Prize for Agriculture. On 29th, if you intend to make that a clap, can we make it a clap for him, please? Thank you so very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on February 2020, he was named African of the Year 2019 by 1 million readers of the Africa Leadership magazine. On 14th December 2020, the Academy of Public Health, the flagship body of West African Institute of Public Health, announced Dr. Adeshina as one of the winners of its 2020 Distinguished Fellowship Award for his successful efforts in helping Africa to curb the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is an abridged version of his very intimidating citation. On 2nd February 2022, the President of the African Development Bank Group was conferred an honorary doctorate by the Federal University of Technology here in Nigeria in recognition of his global leadership in agriculture, food security, development finance, and good governance. He is happily married with very lovely, goal-setting children. Please join me in welcoming a very distinguished lecturer for the day. Let's welcome Dr. Akinwumi A. Adeshina, President, African Development Bank Group. At this auspicious occasion, that applause can come even louder than that for him. A distinguished guest lecturer, sir.
Thank you very much, MC, for those generous words. Your Excellency, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, represented by Senator George Akume, CEO and Secretary to the Federal Government of the Federation. Your Excellency, Papa General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR, former Head of State of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the celebrant today. Your Excellency, the Field Marshal, Mrs. Victoria Gowon, former First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Your Excellency, President Olusegun Obasanjo, GCFR, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Your Excellency, Architect Namadi Sambo, who was my boss, GCON, former Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. His Excellency, the Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Dr. Mohammed Saad Abubakar III, CFR Chairman of the lecture. And I can tell you, sir, that you are doing an incredible job as the chair, and I think that you use your authorities very, very well, and in fact, you have full diplomatic cover and immunity for all the actions that you've taken. Your Excellency Umar Aliou Touré, President of the ECOWAS Commission, thanks for having us, my brother, at your office here. Your Excellency, Executive Governors, Governor Bala Ahmed, my dear brother, we serve together in the government, and other executive governors here and former governors, the former President of the Senate, Bola Saraki, distinguished senators, honorable members of the National Assembly, past and present, honorable ministers, present and past. I see a lot of my colleagues also here today. Our royal fathers, our spiritual fathers, Professor Jerry Ghana, chairman of the National Planning Committee for the events commemorating the 90th birthday of His Excellency General Yakubu Gowon. And Professor, you spoke like a pastor, and I was really waiting for you to collect the offering at the end of what you said. Maybe you'll do that later on. Eminent guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, of course, my very beautiful wife, Grace Yemisi, is here with me. And I can't do anything without her, so Baba gave her, actually Baba says that all of my achievements in life, I deserve 45, and he gives her 55. So he always says, she's Yemisi 55, I'm acting 45, but maybe today you give me 46, sir. And the amazing National Youth Corpus. Yes, Corpus. Your father is celebrating today, so you are all excited. It's a great honor to have been asked by His Excellency General Yakubu Gowon and Mrs. Gowon, and invited by the eminent members of the National Planning Committee to deliver the keynote lecture today. I am filled with a very deep sense of appreciation, given the significance of this august occasion. And I'm sincerely humbled by the privilege of being here to celebrate along with friends, families, and fraternal associates from far and wide the 90th birthday of one of Nigeria's greatest statesmen, a revered leader, a father of the nation, His Excellency General Yakubu Gowon. I wish to congratulate His Excellency on his epoch-making 90th birthday. I would also like to extend my congratulations to your ever-beautiful, elegant, poised, wise, never-aging wife, Mommy Victoria Gowon. You're as beautiful as when he married you, actually. And to your dear family that is here with you. General, you remain the youngest person ever to become the head of state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. At the incredibly young age of 31, responsibility for the affairs of this great nation were thrust upon your shoulders. You married your sweetheart, the radiantly beautiful Victoria Hansatu Zachary. At the age of 34, you were. She was 23. And what a day it was. The image of both of you walking resplendently down the aisle of the Christ Church Cathedral, Lagos, is still etched in the minds of those of us old enough to remember. Permit me to go down the memory lane, General Gowon. And if I might, sir, I think I am a bloody civilian, so I can still do this. My favorite image of you is riding in the royal carriage beside the British monarch, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, during a state visit to the United Kingdom. As you waved to an adoring crowd with your impeccably white gloves, it was an unprecedented reception, and one reserved for exceptional global leaders of that era. The news and the images went viral globally, even though digital and social media did not exist at that time. I knew then that Nigeria was destined for global greatness. It is extremely hard to believe that the young and incredibly handsome military officer with a thin mustache, in fact, General, I am to tell you, sir, I actually started wearing a mustache just because of you. And head of state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is now 90 years old. Along with all the well-wishers here today and many joining around the world, I salute you, General. Hearty congratulations once again. You were an exemplary Nigerian and African leader. As head of state, your leadership was marked by several firsts. Your visionary leadership led to the creation of the Economic Commission of West African State ECOWAS where we are today, bringing together all 16 countries in the region for economic and political cooperation. You created the National Youth Service Corps, the NYSC. That's right. The only policy decision in the history of Nigeria that has endured all governments, a pointer to your remarkable vision and confidence in the youth and Nigeria's unity. I would like the Nigerian NYSC that are there, please rise up and take your cap off and salute the General. Thank you. All right. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you. As a recognition of the beauty and richness of our cultural diversity, and ahead of the first ever Festival of Arts and Culture, FESTAC, you commenced the construction of the National Theatre, now named by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the Wole Soyinka Center for Culture and Creative Arts. Your fingerprints are still seen in countless lasting infrastructure developments across Nigeria. I can keep listing your endless achievements. The bottom line is that leaders are not to be emulated. Leaders are to be emulated. General Gowon, you are to be emulated. Emulated for your candor and nationalistic fervor. Emulated for your humility and ability to work with everyone. Emulated for your never-ending drive to unify the country. Emulated for your never-failing Nigeria praise. Emulated for always having Nigeria in your heart. The acronym for your name says it all. Go on with one Nigeria. When General Gowon was told he had been overthrown in a military coup while attending an OAU summit in Kampala, Uganda, he was amazingly calm and collected. He was the embodiment of serene demeanor he was known for as he walked briskly out of the hall. When asked by the reporters what was next, he said in a very few words, one of his standout statements of all time: "Take care of Nigeria for me." What a profound statement to make at the lowest point of one's career. It was crystal clear, even back then, that General Yakubu Gowon has transcended self to focus on others. Nigeria was on his mind and in his heart. The young army officer with the white gloves had grown to become a leader for Nigerians of all ages, a father of the nation. Prior to independence in 1960, our nation's builders had a dream of a Nigeria that will be the shining light of Africa, and indeed the black race. As the Union Jack flag was lowered and the green, white, green flag of the newly born nation Nigeria was raised on October 1st, 1960, the whole world knew that the largest black nation on earth was making its debut. As Nigerians, we are often preoccupied with our differences and tend to think of the geographical delineations of our land. One question we do not ask ourselves enough is, what are we supposed to be? Certainly, Nigeria, 64 years after independence, should not be a developing country. Nigeria should be a developed nation. As president of the African Development Bank, as I travel around Africa, one issue that often marks conversations is, when will Nigeria develop? I have listened to several leaders tell me that the rise of Africa depends on the rise of Nigeria. As the largest black nation on earth, we carry within us the hopes and aspirations of all black people in the world. The yearnings that this nation will become a beacon in the world and an inspiration that will elevate the whole continent of Africa. It is therefore time that we start thinking of Nigeria, not in terms of what or where we currently are, or how we currently see ourselves, but rather in terms of the responsibility of history that we must lift all of Africa. When the Gulf region was to develop, it took Saudi Arabia to set the pace. And today, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Kuwait, each of those nations have risen to become global giants. When Europe had to develop, it needed Germany, the United Kingdom, and France to spur the growth across the continent. When Asia had to develop, it took China, Japan, and South Korea to spark even wider growth from Singapore to India, Malaysia, and Indonesia. For Africa to develop, it needs Nigeria to develop faster. History beckons on Nigeria, and we cannot disappoint. So I would like to speak to you today about building a global Nigeria. From the onset, I want to be very clear that I'm not here to criticize any government, past or present, but rather as a citizen and also as somebody passionate about this land and the continent, to reflect on what we must do collectively to be all that we can be in the Global Committee of Nations, a global Nigeria. Yes, I dream of a better tomorrow for Nigeria. I refuse to believe that Nigeria will falter or fail. I believe that Nigeria will overcome, rise, flourish, and shine. I believe that Nigeria shall be all that it is meant to be. It was Martin Luther King who said, "History has thrust upon me a responsibility which I cannot turn away." Yes, history has thrust on Nigeria a responsibility it cannot turn away. Nigeria must become a global powerhouse. That is our responsibility. A global Nigeria must start with a poverty-free Nigeria. Today, poverty is extremely pervasive in Nigeria. The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, in 2022 estimated that 63% of persons living within Nigeria, that's 133 million people at the time, are multidimensionally poor. It also states that over half of the population of Nigeria cook with dung, charcoal, wood, rather than cleaner energy. High deprivations are also apparent nationally in sanitation, healthcare, food security, and housing. Poverty is particularly extreme in rural areas where millions of people have been forgotten and abandoned. The gravity of the situation is even worse in northern Nigeria. The NBS report states further, and I quote, that multidimensional poverty is higher in rural areas where 72% of the people are poor, compared to 42% of people in the urban areas. And as we speak today, 65% of the poor, that's 86 million people, live in northern Nigeria, while 35%, nearly 47 million, live in the south. The incidence of multidimensional poverty ranges from a low of 27% in Ondo to a high of 91% in Sokoto. These extremely high levels of poverty have fueled criminality, banditry, kidnappings, and armed robbery. A recent survey of the crime economy in Nigeria shows that the Northwest, Northeast, and North Central have been devastated, with kidnappings becoming a default economy. From schools to farms, markets and towns, villages and communities, the level of suffering, helplessness, and abandonment are gutting out hope and drowning communities and people in despair as economic activities plummet. Consequently, the criminal economy is upending the real economy of Nigeria. To address the situation, urgent and comprehensive efforts are needed to restore security and law and order, to protect lives, property, and farmlands, and to restore normalcy to traumatized zones, towns, villages, and communities, to stabilize and restore economic fortunes, education, health, social protection, and jobs for youth programs must be prioritized. Simultaneously, we must decisively tackle and reduce the burgeoning numbers of out-of-school children. A global Nigeria must be a food-secure Nigeria. The World Food Programme estimates that 26.5 million Nigerians currently face acute hunger. This is a situation that's compounded by inflation that has risen to 32.1%. The Nigerian Economic Summit estimates that inflation in Nigeria reached a 28-year high in June of 2024. The current high level of food insecurity and hunger deserves decisive actions. In the first quarter of 2024, Nigeria's food import bill hit a 5-year high at 1.5 trillion naira. Nigeria's food import bill topped 7.8 trillion naira in the past 6 years alone. The African Development Bank Group and partners provided 314 million naira to Nigeria for emergency food production. I think that will have produced at least 4 million metric tons of food if that plan had been followed and implemented as agreed. Securing Nigeria's food supplies requires accelerating local food production, providing farmers with high-yielding seeds, the accessibility and affordability of fertilizers, mechanization, and the rapid expansion of irrigation, given the challenges of climate change. To ensure food security, the federal government, in conjunction with the state governments, should, in my humble opinion, return to the highly successful Growth Enhancement Scheme and the Electronic Wallet Scheme that was put in place when I was your Minister of Agriculture. Both initiatives delivered high-quality seeds and fertilizers to over 15 million farmers, which made food available at relatively low costs across Nigeria. For purposes of implementation, transparency, and accelerated impact, the Growth Enhancement Scheme and the e-wallet scheme should be protected by legislation. To help unleash the potential of the food and agricultural sector, the African Development Bank and its partners are investing right now over $814 million in the development of what's called special agro-industrial processing zones in 8 states of the Federation. Thank you. This will help Nigeria to process and add value to all of its agricultural commodities and establish critically needed platforms for becoming competitive in global agricultural value chains. Decisive and sustained efforts are needed to end insecurity, especially to save vast areas of the food belt of Nigeria in the Northwest, Northeast, and Middle Belt. The deployment of digital surveillance tools, drones, artificial intelligence, and satellite imagery needs to be increasingly used to track and provide intelligence. The development and the deployment of farm protection guards and safe food transport corridors are worth developing. A more secure Nigeria will be a more food secure Nigeria. A global Nigeria must be competitive globally.
Go to the front row.
Nigeria is losing out on the global drive for competitiveness. In a world that is rapidly being changed via education, digital skills acquisition, and innovations across all sectors. The Global Competitiveness Index rankings for 2022 show that Nigeria was ranked 114 out of 140 countries globally. And worse, Nigeria ranked well below several African countries, including South Africa, Seychelles, Botswana, and Namibia in Southern Africa, below Senegal and Ghana in West Africa, below Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda in East Africa, and as well below Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia in North Africa. A global Nigeria must invest heavily in education. The ability of any nation to be globally competitive is determined by its human capacity or talent pools. That's why, Your Excellencies, the greatest investment that Nigeria can make is in education, especially higher education. It is worth noting that today, China has over 240 million people with higher education, which is more than the entire population of Nigeria. However, only 7% of Nigeria's population have had access to higher education. This puts Nigeria in an uncompetitive position with developed countries, where the share of the population with higher education is high, including South Korea, 70%, Canada, 67%, Japan, 66%, Ireland, 63%, Luxembourg, 60%, and the United Kingdom, 58%. Nigeria must therefore step up and become an undisputed leader on innovation in Africa and position itself through a massive paradigm-shifting investment in education to catch up and to bridge the talent divide with developed economies and other emerging market economies. A global Nigeria must have globally competitive quality infrastructure. After years of growth, post-independence, industrial development in Nigeria is today constrained by extremely poor state of transport, ports, and logistics infrastructure. Estimates suggest that it costs $35,000 to export 100 tons of produce from Nigeria, compared to just $4,000 from Ghana. About 90% of passengers and freight movements in Nigeria rely on roads, of which only 18% are paved. Meanwhile, our seaports are gridlocked. Recently, the Financial Times reported that the congestion at the port in Lagos has become so bad that it could cost more than $4,000 to truck a container 20 kilometers inland, almost as much as it costs to ship the very same container 12,000 nautical miles all the way from China. Here, Nigeria can learn from Morocco, where the African Development Bank supported the development of the Tangier Med port. This port is unique. It is an industrial port complex and platform with over 1,100 companies operating from within it. They collectively exported over 8 billion euros worth of goods in 2020. The port is home to several global companies, including Bosch, Daimler, Huawei, Siemens, and several others. Local companies located in the Tangier Med have also allowed Morocco to move up several global value chains, including automobiles, automotive parts, aeronautics, agriculture. Thank you. Agriculture, food manufacturing, textile, and logistics. Annually, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, over 460,000 cars are manufactured in that zone for exports every year. And more interesting is that the bulk of the workers and employees at the port complex are Moroccans. I decided to take a walk one day at the Tangier Med Port. I saw a well-synchronized maze moving with incredible efficiency. There were no kilometer-long lines of trucks waiting to get in and out of the port. The takeaway from Morocco's Tangier port is simply this: Nigeria must move away from the usual Gestapo-like approaches of raiding ports, or deploying soldiers to decongest ports, or having to control vehicular traffic at the ports. There are more sophisticated and efficient ways of doing so. With a view to creating a global Nigeria, Nigeria's focus should not be on decongesting ports, but on transforming ports. These must start with cleaning up administrative bottlenecks, most of which are completely unnecessary, with multiple government agencies at the ports, high transaction costs, and even blatant extortion from illegal taxes and contributions that never go into government coffers. To strongly support Africa's social and economic growth, the African Development Bank invests heavily in infrastructure. Over the last 8 years alone, we have invested over $55 billion in infrastructure, including roads and highways, transport corridors, seaports, airports, ICT infrastructure, and regional power transmission networks. The African Development Bank has invested $369.2 million in the highway connecting Enugu to Bamenda in Cameroon, a transport corridor that will serve 11 million people. Also, we have invested $49.5 million in the Lekki Toll Road, easing traffic and lowering transport costs. The bank is mobilizing now support for the development of the railway line connecting Kano to Maradi in the Niger Republic. And of significant note, the African Development Bank has provided $12.6 million to my brother, the President of ECOWAS Commission, to support a feasibility study for the Lagos-Abidjan Corridor Highway. As a bank, we and other institutions will help to mobilize the $15 billion necessary to finance that corridor, which carries over 80% of the trade in the region. When completed, the corridor will enhance transport connections from Nigeria to the rest of the West Africa region, with one border post to facilitate intra-regional trade. And just for full disclosure of why this is very important to me, when His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari was president, I came here to see him, and I talked about this particular project. He told me, Akin, if you don't get that project on the way, don't come back to Nigeria. And when I went to Ivory Coast, where I was staying, President Alassane Ouattara looked at me and said, Akin, if you don't get that railway, that corridor done, don't stay in Abidjan. So you can imagine I have my incentives to get it done. But I want to thank the President of ECOWAS for the great work he's doing to get this on the way. A global Nigeria must achieve universal access to electricity. Today, the major challenge facing Nigeria's manufacturing is the very high cost and unreliability of electricity supply. Load shedding and the inconsistent availability of electrical power have resulted in high and uncompetitive manufacturing costs from Nigeria. Most Nigerian manufacturing companies self-provide their own energy with a high dependence on generators, diesel, and heavy fuel oil. Their emissions contributions make them brown industries, not green industries. And I remember one day I was traveling with my wife from Ibadan to Lagos, and I saw this really weird big advert, and it was all about generators. And they wrote under it, we are the nation's #1 reliable energy supplier. It has been estimated by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, that Nigeria loses about $29 billion annually. $29 billion annually. That is 5.8% of its GDP due to lack of reliable power supply. The report also indicates that Nigerians spend $14 billion per year on generators and fuel. There is no better way to say it. The lack of electricity is killing Nigerian industries. According to the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, industries spent $93.1 billion on alternative energy in 2018 when I read that. Today, no business can survive in Nigeria without generators. Consequently, the abnormal has become normal. Nigeria has gas and crude oil in abundance, yet 86 million people live daily without electricity. Today, Nigeria is the #1 country in the world in terms of the total number of people without electricity. To support Nigeria and African countries, other African countries, the African Development Bank invests massively in the continent's power sector. To support the implementation of Nigeria's power sector recovery program, the bank provided $200 million for the Nigerian electrification project, which is designed to fill the country's electricity access gap. We have invested $210 million in the Nigeria transmission project to strengthen the grid power evacuation and regional interconnection. Your Excellencies, a major component of the African Development Bank's energy strategy was the launch of what we call Desert to Power Initiative, a $20 billion initiative to provide electricity to 250 million people across 11 countries of the Sahel, including northern Nigeria. It is expected that the Desert to Power investment will create the world's largest solar zone. This initiative will draw on lessons from successful projects already financed by the bank, including the world's largest concentrated solar power plant called the New Ouarzazate Power Project in Morocco and the Bembang Solar Project in Egypt. To support the efforts of African countries to achieve universal access to electricity, the president of the World Bank Group, my friend Ajay Banga, and I made a decision at the spring meeting of the World Bank in April that the World Bank and the African Development Bank together, we will connect 300 million people, Africans, including Nigerians, to electricity by 2030. And that's what's called the Mission 300. It's the largest such effort in the world. A global Nigeria must be an industrialized Nigeria. For decades, the share of manufacturing in Nigeria's GDP has hovered around 7%, as the nation has not been able to extricate itself from a comatose industrial manufacturing sector that is yet to unleash the fullness of its innovative potential. This is in sharp contrast to the dynamic and rapid performance of manufacturing in Asian countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, and China. While Asian countries are focused on export of manufactured products, Nigeria's approach has been on import substitution. The manufacturing sector of Nigeria represents only 3% of total revenues from exports, but accounts for 50% of the imports into the country. Instead of being forward-looking in expanding the share of manufactured goods in total export revenue, Nigeria focuses on the model of import substitution. Import substitution, while important, is a very restrictive vision. It looks towards the largest single train refinery in the world, with a capacity to produce 650,000 barrels of refined petroleum products per day, is nothing short of a technological marvel. And it tells you what Nigerians can do. I am proud of Aliko Dangote. I went there myself, and I said to myself, if a person can do this one in Nigeria, just imagine if you have so many of this in Nigeria, what we will be. This refinery will reduce Nigeria's dependence on others, secure national food supplies, reduce foreign exchange expenditure, lower fuel prices, and hopefully create millions of jobs in the country. Nigeria needs more industrial global launching pads like the Dangote refinery. As head of state, General Gowon's National Development Plan was a masterpiece. With industrialization as a pivotal priority, which spurred successive governments. Beginning in the early 1970s, Nigeria instituted an industrial policy to support automobile assembly plants. How proud we were to ride made in Nigeria Peugeots and Volkswagens. Oh, God was good, wasn't it? Consumer demand was fueled by auto loans by commercial banks. General Olusegun Obasanjo, as head of state in 1976, made it mandatory for government officials across the board to ride made in Nigeria cars. As the head of state himself and governors drove made in Nigeria vehicles, there was an initial surge in the assembly of cars with high local demand for locally made vehicles. Unfortunately, this was not sustained. If Nigeria had sustained this drive, it would have become the lead exporter of vehicles in Africa and to the rest of the world, exactly what South Africa has done and become today. Today, Nigeria prides itself as a demand center for vehicles made by others, wasting resources that it should put into building and supporting a strong local automotive industry. The emergence of Innocent Automobile, an indigenous Nigerian company based in Inewi, Anambra State, is to be highly applauded. I am proud of Innocent. Today, Innocent's fleet includes several options, including fuel and electric vehicles, and military-grade armored vehicles, which it now exports. I think you should clap for him. But it would make more than one company, it would take more than one company to build an industry. The advantages for a sound local automobile industry will be massive. Massive. Research, technology, and innovation. Highly skilled engineers and labor force. Small and medium-sized businesses supplying the automobile value chains. Savings from exports, imports, and so on. With the size of its population and markets, Nigeria should pursue vigorously joint ventures to establish major auto manufacturing industries in this country. An industrialized Nigeria will be a wealthy and prosperous Nigeria. A nation that should inspire Nigeria to be all it can be is Korea. Korea does not import to consume. It imports what it uses to drive its industrialization. Korea has no steel, so it imports steel and uses it to become the world's largest builder, an exporter of cargo and passenger ships. Korea has no oil or natural gas. It relies on the import of crude oil and gas. It uses that gas to power its economy and to drive industries. Korea has leveraged the import of electric machinery to become one of the largest exporters of cars in the world. Korea's major car companies, manufacturers, from Hyundai to Kia to Renault Korea, Daewoo, and so on, exported 2.8 million cars in 2023 to 198 countries. In the first quarter of 2024, Korea exported $37 billion worth of cars. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, that is 67% of Nigeria's crude oil export per year. all in just 1 quarter. As a result, Korea is an industrialized economy and one of the largest exporters in the world. Its exports in 2023 were $623 billion. Nigeria's import is for consumption, not for industrialization. Nigeria's export in 2023 was a mere $57 billion, of which crude oil accounts for $52 billion. Paradoxically, for decades, Nigeria has exported crude oil and imported petrol and finished petroleum products. The resultant impact on the economic divergence is stark. Poverty, take it for example. Just 2% of Koreans live in poverty. And yet today, the number of Nigerians living in poverty is 88.4 million people, or 40% of the population. That is 1.69 times the population of Korea. And what about per capita income? The per capita income of Korea is $34,164 per person. The per capita income of Nigeria, by contrast, is $1,109 per person. Today, Korea is the 10th largest donor country in the world. A global Nigeria must therefore move into high-valued manufacturing. Take the example of Vietnam, a nation that was at war with the United States for 20 years. Despite setbacks and post-war challenges, it quickly emerged as an Asian tiger by mimicking the successful Asian countries, such as South Korea. It pushed into relatively complex product categories and horizontal diversification that also included processing of agricultural products. Vietnam's diversified exports in 2020 included $153 billion of electrical machinery and equipment, $23.9 billion of machinery including computers, $23.4 billion of footwear, and $15.5 billion of clothing, accessories, among others. In total, Vietnam's exports in 2020 stood at $348 billion. Malaysia achieved vertical diversification from an agricultural base of rubber and palm oil, which it got from here. It will later go on to invest heavily in high-tech sectors, including electronics. In 2020, its largest exports by value were in semiconductors, electrical integrated circuits, refined petroleum products, palm oil, vulcanized rubber and accessories, and solar power diodes. The value of Malaysia's export in 2020 derived from the following: electrical machinery and equipment, $88.6 billion. Mineral fuels, including oil, $25.5 billion. Machinery, including computers, $20.2 billion. Animal vegetable exports and waxes, $13.5 billion. Rubber and rubber articles, $11.2 billion, among others. In total, Malaysia's export in 2022 was valued at $234 billion US. By contrast, Nigeria's exports in 2020 were dominated by mineral fuels, including oil, valued at $29.7 billion only, which accounts for 89% of the exports. Nigeria's total export value was a mere $33.5 billion. That dollar amount represents a minus 3.6% decrease since 2016 and a drop of minus 37.5% in 2019 and 2020. Interestingly, Nigeria's imports were dominated by machinery, including computers, mineral fuels, including oil, vehicles, electrical machinery, equipment, pharmaceutical and plastics, By contrast, most of these imports are what Vietnam and Malaysia export in abundance. And worse, Nigeria imports mineral fuels which it should be producing as a leading crude oil exporting nation. It exports crude, that looks like an export I'm just doing over there. It exports crude, it imports refined products, a befuddling irony. So what is my message in all of what I've said here? While Nigeria's export basket has hardly changed, Malaysia and Vietnam have used aggressive horizontal and vertical industrial manufacturing diversification to move from low-valued products to high-valued market products. The result is self-evident in the comparative wealth of the three countries. While export value per capita is $7,100 for Malaysia and $3,600 for Vietnam, it is only $160 for Nigeria. While Malaysia and Vietnam have moved to global manufacturing growth and creating massive wealth and jobs for themselves, Nigeria remains in a survival mode, still unable to substitute the imports of its petroleum products, while being one of the largest exporters of crude oil. Nigeria has had good policies, templates and programs for industrialization and expanding industrial manufacturing for decades. Nigeria's first national development plan emphasized industrialization. There was a national economic empowerment development strategy, NEEDS, in the 1990s, and the Nigerian Industrial Revolution Plan, NIRP, in 2015. These were all good policies. But there is need to close the gap between policy ideas and implementation. Today, Your Excellencies, capacity utilization of factories hovers around 40% compared to desired 70%. The reality, in view of the several challenges facing the industrial manufacturing sector, is that firms are moving to neighboring countries where there is greater macroeconomic stability, enabling environments, and a much easier ease of doing business. To be a manufacturer in Nigeria is not an easy business. You succeed not because of the ease of doing business, but by surmounting several constraints that limit industrial manufacturing. Your Excellencies, a global Nigeria must deliver a talent dividend. The rate and speed at which Nigerians are leaving the country, the so-called Japa syndrome, risk undermining Nigeria's economic drive for economic rejuvenation and positioning for global dominance. Nigeria's best talents, including doctors and nurses and lawyers and engineers, architects and computer programmers, artists and cultural entrepreneurs, sport athletes, and even bankers, are voting with their feet and leaving Nigeria in droves due to economic hardships, high unemployment, a corrosive rate of inflation that daily eats away the value of their assets, insecurity, and a palpable decline in their quality of life. PricewaterhouseCoopers estimates that the exodus of Nigerian talents will lead to a loss of close to $5 billion annually in this country. Yet, this is happening against the backdrop of rapid growth in artificial intelligence that holds enormous opportunities for shaping and transforming the world economy. In a recent analysis, PwC estimated that artificial intelligence will add $116 trillion to the global economy by 2030 and $316 billion annually to the economies of just 4 African countries: Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and Ghana by 2030. Nigeria is well poised to take advantage of this opportunity, with the nation being one of the leaders in the fintech industry, and companies such as Flutterwave, PalmPay, MTN Mobile Money, PiggyVest, ranking among the top 250 fintech companies globally. And I think we should clap for these young guys. Nigeria also has 5 out of the top 7 unicorn fintech companies in Africa. Just to be clear, for those that don't know what a unicorn is, that's when the capitalization of a company reaches $1 billion and above. So when you have young Nigerians, 5 out of 7, with companies doing that, that tells you the potential that we have to take over the world. Today we have InterSwitch, Flutterwave, Opay, and Andela demonstrating the ingenuity and the entrepreneurial capacity of Nigerians to lead, to innovate, and to dominate the competitive industry of the fintech. That is why, Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank, along with partners, is investing $614 million in Nigeria in what is called an iDice program. This bold initiative is designed to develop digital and creative enterprises, which will add $6 billion to Nigeria's GDP and create 6.4 million jobs. The African Development Bank is also supporting a center of excellence in computer coding in Nigeria as part of our larger effort in Africa to develop 130 other centers that will develop the next generation of computer coders for artificial intelligence-driven economy that is already here. However, the Japa syndrome risks unraveling Nigeria's capacities in these fields unless urgent actions are taken to stem the tide. In 2022, a survey by Tech Cabal says 47% of the tech professionals in Nigeria indicated a desire to leave the country by 2024. There is no doubt that this will seriously hamper Nigeria's technological capacity to innovate, its readiness index for the 4th industrial revolution, and its ability to move into higher-end industries, such as electronics, semiconductors, the development of appliances and machineries, and of course, space exploration. We must fix the reasons for the massive exodus of Nigeria's young and innovative talent. This requires a stable macroeconomic environment, strong infrastructure, more attractive salaries, state-of-the-art facilities, and technology hubs, support innovation and entrepreneurship, enhance talent absorptive capacities by industries, and fiscal incentives. We must do this with our eyes fixated on what we can potentially be, not just in West Africa, not just in Africa, but in the world. We must decisively harness and turn Nigeria's demographic asset into a talent dividend. We must become a global Nigeria, brimming with talent, skills, and entrepreneurship capacity that is powered by clear and strong and consistent and sustainable government policies to become globally competitive. To become globally competitive and to retain our young talents if we are to drive growth and competitiveness globally. I know many people may think that getting Nigerians out of here, I'm not against immigration. Don't get me wrong. But I don't believe that the future of Nigerians' youth or that of Africa's youth lies in Europe, America, China, or anywhere else. It lies in a Nigeria growing very well with equitable growth and Africa doing the same, able to create quality jobs for its own young people. And there is no doubt in my mind that we can do that. A global Nigeria will turn Japa, we are living, into Japada, we are back. To get there, I have some good news. I'm delighted to announce here today that just 3 days ago, the African Development Bank's Board of Directors approved $100 million for the establishment of the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank for Nigeria. This new bank will support the businesses of the youth in Nigeria, using technical assistance, business incubation, and invest equity, quasi-equity, and debt in these businesses, as well as deploy guarantee instruments to de-risk the lending to all this by all financial institutions in Nigeria. It will be a new day and a new dawn for Nigeria, and I want to congratulate the President and the team for that. Minister Wale Edun has worked exceptionally hard with us on this, and our Secretary to the Federal Government, please kindly thank him on my behalf. Your Excellencies, as I bring this to a close, while we have several challenges, the opportunities before us are immense. Our challenges are nothing more than hurdles that we can and we must surmount in our race to transform Nigeria from a developing nation into a developed and well-respected nation. The French poet and novelist Victor Hugo said, "Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come." It is time for a global Nigeria. Nelson Mandela said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." It is time to look beyond our challenges and decisively seize the moment. When others doubt us, we must never doubt ourselves. United, focused, and determined, we must create a new and brighter future for Nigeria, a global Nigeria. For the time has come for Nigeria to arise and shine. Yes, in the words of Isaiah chapter 30, verse 3, "Arise and shine, for your light has come. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising." Indeed, the labors of our heroes past will never be in vain. And as a people, we will proudly serve our sovereign motherland. I am optimistic about a global Nigeria. It is well within our collective reach and our collective capacities to make it happen. As we celebrate General Gowon's 98th birthday and Nigeria's 64th birthday, let us in unison commit to achieving a global Nigeria. Oh, our dear nation, Nigeria, as a nation born in hope, sustained by hope, destined for greatness, you will fulfill your promise. Through storms and raging winds, your anchor will hold firm, guiding us towards a glorious future. We will safeguard your light, no matter how it flickers, for your enduring flame will never be dimmed. God bless you all, our dear nation, our homeland, Nigeria. Let us go on, as Gowon says, with one Nigeria. Congratulations and happy 90th birthday, General Yakubu Gowon. May God bless and continue to keep you. May God bless our beloved nation and help us to become a prosperous, shining light, a truly global Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, please be seated. Thank you very much. Today, we listened to a passionate Nigerian deliver the keynote at the 90th birthday anniversary lecture on this 18th day of our Lord 2024. Because I am not perfect in doing what it takes to give a gbosa, I call on our coppers in the house to do the honors. Let's go. 3 gbosas. I can't hear you. Dr. Adeshino, that was for you. We need a global Nigeria. A nation that must stand tall so that Africa can follow. For Africa to move fast, Nigeria has to be in a hurry. We need a Nigeria that understands what time it is. We need to step up to become an undisputed leader. A prayer, advisory, and a keynote address. An academic of no mean repute, a man of excellent erudition, a development economic expert, and an agricultural economist par excellence, a passionate Nigerian, an international technocrat, trenchant and cerebral, Dr. Akinwumi Adeshina, President of the Africa Development Bank, a gift from Nigeria to the world. Congratulations, sir. And of course, why not? Our celebration.
Well, of course, if you do ask me, that was a presidential worthy speech coming from the African Development Bank President Akinwumi Adeshina, while paying glowing tributes to the former head of state of Nigeria, that is General Yakubu Gowon, as it clocks 90 today. Of course, it is a day whereby leadership styles like this that has been exemplified by a former head of state is being praised, knowing fully well that when these continues or trickles down to the crop of leaders in the country, that a particular legacy will be upheld. Now, during the course of his keynote address by the AFDB president, Akinwumi Adeshina, while also eulogizing the former leader, he talked about his exemplary lifestyle, talking about how he's been able to channel the different policies of governments that forms the foundation of growth of course, Nigeria, though we've not really seen that play out, but then is expected to materialize. And he also used the opportunity to talk about the need for a global Nigeria, a birth of a global entity called Nigeria that will drive inclusive and all-round growth for the African continent. Now, he used the opportunity to talk about several things that the AFDB is hoping and planning to do to further liberate the country, which has to do with the investment of about $614 million into Nigeria, designed to develop and digitalize the creative sector in order to improve the country's GDP index and create jobs, about 6 million jobs for the youth of the country. He also made it known that the bank is hoping to invest about another $100 million to establish a youth entrepreneurship investment bank in Nigeria to support businesses of youth in Nigeria in the areas of technology support, business support, operational support, in order to help the business ecosystem grow. While comparing Nigeria with other Asian countries, he talked about the fact that, yes, those Asian countries had either to suffered economic downturn, but through decisive and viable policies, their economies became vibrant and transformed in terms of per capita income, industrialization, economic growth, even in the areas of manufacturing and export volume. He also said that Nigeria can have that sort of potential materialize into economic growth only if the leaders can begin to look at what can be done in terms of policy ideas, policy creation, and implementation of those ideas. And he went on to say that Nigeria needs to focus on investments into industry-based initiatives that can help boost productivity and ensure economic growth. Well, he lamented the good policies of government and the developmental plans of government, saying that there's a need to not only talk, but then begin to have technocrats and begin to have plans, ideations that can actually bring about the sort of implementation that will liberate the Nigerian economy. Then he also eulogized the giant strides of Nigerian fintech companies that have been elevated to unicorn status, saying that that will be pivotal for the possibility of Nigeria taking over the world in that space, knowing fully well that the potential is there and the idea is also there to drive the needed growth in that sector. While also talking, he lauded the establishment of the Dangote refinery, saying that Nigeria needs more industrial launching pads like that, and also the need to create, an agro-industrial zones, or should I just say agro-industrial zones all around the country to actually boost the sector and improve the indices as regards what can be exported from the country to the global community and market, and can bring about some sort of competitiveness for Nigeria as it hopes to also be at par with what other powers in the global space also are doing. So these basically are words to encourage the Nigerian leaders in this line of thought as regards what can be done to improve Nigeria's value and image on the global stage. And of course, one would expect that the crop of leaders that we have right now in the country, both immediate and the ones that are to come, will be able to take a cue from these messages that have come from the current AFDB president, Akinwumi Adesina, and will be able to move in that particular line to see how Nigeria can take its space, not only in the continent, but among the Committee of Nations. Now, we have our correspondent, Emmanuel Bagudu, who has been documenting this particular public lecture in honor of the former head of state, Yakubu Gowon, and he will also be sharing his perspective with us. Emmanuel Bagudu, it's nice to have you around. And how do you feel listening to Akinwumi Adesina, pour out his mind about his prospects for Nigeria in terms of being one of the global leaders?
Very, very passionate, outpouring there from the president of African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina. He was very passionate. He brought out 10, perspectives, 10 factors that can actually make Nigeria global. The topic of his the paper was towards a global Nigeria. Of course, he made mentions of issues of electricity, issues of talent dividends, and of course, food security, and then a lot of issues Nigeria is facing. This has to be taken care of. Industrialization, talking about import and export. He made references to South Korea, which is actually one of the reference points for global investors. Issues of course, importation and exportation, where he made mention that South Korea's export in a year is over $600 billion, and Nigeria is only just $27 billion, out of which 52 is on crude oil, which is actually poor. So to be a global Nigeria, Akinwumi Adesina, made a lot of recommendations, and he brought a very good news that will make Nigerian youth not to be going to be champering, of course, the normal phenomenon. He said that, of course, that the African Development Bank is going to release, after a partnership with Nigerian government, is going to release $100 million this year to establish the youth investment bank in Nigeria. That will do a lot in helping Nigerian youth to stay back in Nigeria, to continue to use their tech skills to develop the country. Yeah.
So Emmanuel, how do you feel? How do you think the crop of leaders would feel right now, having listened to Akinwumi Adesina? Because while he was eulogizing Yakubu Gowon, he talked about an economic template that was meant to drive growth and development for Nigeria, but at some point, the leaders derailed. And for him to have said all these in terms of his prospects for Nigeria, we have leaders in the country listening to such, speech like this. How do you think they'll be feeling? Feeling sort of like a failure, or maybe, there are still rooms for improvements?
He said it as is. And of course, it's so. In fact, when he mentioned issues that a global Nigeria has to be, Nigeria with sufficient electricity. A lot of people were looking at the past president And of course, they were just looking at their faces who are still at the high table. And of course, the guilt was so obvious. So it simply means that, this particular lecture has an impact. And of course, even the standing ovation that, came from the former president after the lecture is something very, very significant. And of course, whether we like it or not, something has to be done about the Nigerian situation. And then, of course, Nigerians will keep on talking. Stakeholders should not stop talking. And whether we like it or not, something is going to be done. And the last sentence of his speech was that there is hope. He quoted, Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, where he said, Nigeria should rise, humanity should rise and shine. Nations, come to your light, and of course, kings will come, to your glory. That was his last statement, before he left, his the podium. So it simply means there is hope, and of course, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
Okay, so Emmanuel, before I let you go, there have been talks around Nigerians having technocrats, people who are potentially sound when it comes to building or creating policies that can help improve Nigeria, as it were. But then by the time they get to the confines of power or assume leadership in the country, it seems as though we begin to see the opposites. We begin to see the opposite of it. Now, is it enough to give this kind of fantastic speech, but then by the time we have these people come into the reins of power or step into the realm of power, they are not able to deliver? Is that a challenge when it comes to the kind of people that we elect as leaders? Just in about 30 seconds, I need your reply.
Reason why we are not progressing is because of lack of political goodwill. That, of course, Nigerians are not the people that have actually succeeded in investing in Nigeria are successfully invested, not because there's ease of doing business, but because they have been able, to cross hurdles, cross bottlenecks, fight doggedly to succeed. He made an example of Aliko Dangote, who is currently facing a lot of challenge. So he made it clear that Nigerian leaders must be able to, unite with investors, talk to, make business very easy. They shouldn't change. They should stick their promise when they come into power, and they shouldn't make people, go through a lot of difficult things, difficult, terrain before they can, establish businesses in Nigeria and then set up the economy. Making references to the likes of Aliko Dangote. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Emmanuel Bagudu, for sharing your thoughts with us. We hope that, Nigerian leaders can begin to not only listen to fantastic speeches like this, but be able to translate that into workable plans that can drive growth, economic and development for the country. At this time, let me just...